Forget candlelight and whispered sweet nothings. Seriously, purge that from your mind. Imagine your wedding night, the single most intimate moment, and the room? Packed. Your family, his family, maybe even the local priest. All of them watching. Not just peeking, but literally in the room, making sure everything was, well, legal. That wasn't some weird, isolated custom. It was often the norm. And that, my friends, is just the curtain call. All right, so that was the wedding night, the spectacle. But peel back the layers from that specific, profoundly awkward evening. What were you actually born into? Because for a medieval woman, her entire life, from the first gasp of smoky, damp air in a thatched hut, was a carefully constructed cage. No, not a golden one, more like rough-hewn oak, smelling faintly of livestock and mildew.
You'd likely not live past your late 40s, if you were lucky. Your mother probably didn't either. Hell, half your siblings? Gone before they could even learn to properly whine. This wasn't some abstract risk. It was the rhythm of existence, a constant hum of sickness, famine, and the cold indifference of a world that didn't much care for delicate constitutions. Measles, dysentery, the plague, a cough that just wouldn't quit. They were all just Tuesday. Your destiny wasn't whispered by a fortune teller. It was shouted by your birth, by the land your family owned or didn't, and by the sheer brutal necessity of continuing the line. Marriage? It wasn't some romantic ideal you scrolled through Pinterest for. It was a transaction, a land deal, an alliance forged in cold, damp churches, often when you were barely out of childhood. We're talking 12, 14 years old for many. Not a choice, but an obligation, sealed with a hand in marriage and the chilling understanding that your body, your very existence, was now property, a vessel, to bear children, to work the fields, to keep the hearth, to simply endure. And endure they did, or tried to, often not for long. Okay, so you're married. The families have finally, thankfully, cleared out of the room. But don't picture anything resembling privacy, not in the way we understand it. Because the bed, a straw mattress often on a raised platform, maybe a feather tick if you were lucky, it wasn't just yours. It was the focal point of the hut. Everything happened around it. And what happened on it? Not romance, not choice. It was duty. And that duty had a singular, relentless purpose. Children. From the moment the marriage was consecrated, the clock started ticking. And it didn't stop. Because your value, your worth, was directly tied to your womb. Forget individual aspirations. Forget personal fulfillment. Your body was a factory, expected to churn out heirs, laborers, insurance against the brutal certainty of child mortality. 1 in 3 children, sometimes even 1 in 2, didn't make it past their 5th birthday. Think about that. You give birth. You cradle a tiny, vulnerable life. You probably named it quickly, maybe even baptized it just in case, because you knew, deep down, the odds, they weren't in your favor. And then you do it again, and again, and again. Childbirth, the ultimate gamble. No epidurals, obviously. No sterile surgical tools. Just a midwife, maybe a few other women, hot water, and a prayer. If the baby was breached, if the labor went on too long, if infection set in, puerperal fever, a silent killer, rampant thanks to unsanitary conditions. You could hemorrhage, you could tear, you could simply die. The estimates are grim, but somewhere around 1 in 50 births, maybe even higher in some periods, would claim the mother's life. And if you survived, you were often left with prolapses, chronic pain, a body perpetually exhausted, perpetually recovering, because almost immediately you'd be pregnant again. Contraception? A few folk remedies, perhaps a prayer to a saint. Mostly, though, it was just whatever happened, whatever God or fate decided. You were fertile ground, and the expectation was you'd produce. This cycle of constant pregnancy, constant labor, constant loss, it broke women. Physically, mentally. They carried a profound, heavy fatigue. Their bones ached from nutrient deficiencies, their bodies worn from endless physical exertion. Because it wasn't just the baby making, oh no, the daily grind. Fetching water from the well or river, often miles away, grinding grain by hand, spinning wool, weaving cloth, tending a small garden, sometimes working the fields alongside your husband, cooking over an open fire, smoke stinging your eyes, charring your lungs. And all this while recovering from the last birth, carrying the next. Your back hurt, your hands were raw, your feet calloused and cracked. You slept little, ate poorly, usually what was left after the men had taken their fill. Hygiene? A bucket of cold water, maybe a communal bath once a month if you were lucky enough to live near a bathhouse, and they were rare and often viewed with suspicion later on. You lived with the pervasive smells of wood smoke, damp earth, livestock, and unwashed bodies. Fleas, lice, constant companions. And you wondered, sometimes, silently, if this was all there was. Just this endless, repetitive cycle of dirt, duty, and death. Because it genuinely was. Wait. If you're finding this glimpse into the raw, unvarnished past as compelling and, frankly, as disturbing as I do, then you should consider hitting that subscribe button. It tells YouTube you like seeing this kind of honest, unflinching history, and it means we can keep digging into the diaries of the past. No sugarcoating, ever. So, your body, your labor, it belonged to him, legally. Under the doctrine of femme couvert, common in many medieval legal systems, your legal identity practically dissolved into your husband's the moment you married. You couldn't own property independently, couldn't enter into contracts, couldn't sue or be sued. Any wages you might earn? His. Your very being was subsumed. You were effectively an extension of him. Your identity redefined by your marital status. And if your husband was cruel, if he beat you, if he was neglectful, recourse was almost non-existent. The church, the law, society itself, they all prioritized the stability of the family, the sanctity of the marital bond, far above the individual suffering of a woman. A wife was expected to endure, to obey, to be silent. Her worth was in her utility, her fertility, her quiet adherence to an existence that demanded everything and gave back very little. No, less than little. It gave back the same bleak, smoky, damp air you inhaled from birth until the day you stopped. Often much sooner than you ever should have. And then there was the bedroom, the core, The place where all these threads, duty, body, subjugation, snapped taut. Because intimacy, for many, wasn't about connection. It was transaction, a brutal biological imperative. Your body, not your own, pressed into service, every single time. No choice, absolutely none. No real contraception, just whispered, desperate charms, or nothing at all. You just endured and hoped, prayed. Every act a roll of the dice, life or death. The overwhelming fear, a cold knot in the gut, because you knew. Another pregnancy, another tearing of your already ravaged insides, your back, your hips, your teeth. The calcium leached, the exhaustion etched deep. Then the labor, days, stretches that felt like eternity. Not in a hospital, not with doctors, just dirt floors, dim light, perhaps a few women, an older midwife with traditions, not science. The screams, the blood, the unimaginable pain. Puerperal fever, stalking. A quiet, insidious killer, invisible, misunderstood. The stench of it, the absolute terror of it. You delivered, or you didn't. Many didn't. Mother and child often gone together, the earth hungry. If the child lived, a tiny, fragile victory. Until the next time, and the next. Your womb a relentless battlefield. Your strength bled out, drop by drop, birth by birth. Every ache, every persistent cough, every dizzy spell, a reminder. The clock was ticking, faster for you. This was the secret, the true unspeakable bedroom secret. Not whispered desires, but the constant suffocating dread. The relentless biological demand. A slow execution, with agonizingly brief, terrifying reprieves. Until silence finally claimed you. We look back and shudder, sure. But what has fundamentally changed about the human condition when it comes to the intimate, the deeply vulnerable? Expectations shift, tech evolves, but the underlying anxieties, the quiet sacrifices, the things we don't talk about behind closed doors, do they ever truly disappear? Or do we just get better at hiding them? What secrets do we carry today? Think about it. If this resonated, hit like, subscribe. You know the drill.